everybody. Welcome to another exciting edition of Cowboys Overtime here on StarTelegram.com, brought to you by Window Nation. I'm Fort Worth Star Telegram columnist Mac Engel. He's Mr. Clarence E. Hill Jr. Clarence, let's get into it. This time a week ago, Cowboys weren't sure what they're going to do with their head coach. Then a matter of, 12 hours later, Jerry Jones issues a press statement, followed by Mike McCarthy press conference celebrating the return of the king. Mike McCarthy is back, baby. Give me another 12-5 and early first-round playoff exit. Clarence, did you see any scenario where realistically the Cowboys were not going to bring back a coach who had been this successful and still had a year remaining on his deal?
Surprise, my boots are back in Texas. Surprise.
What happened to your voice? You going through it's like late onset puberty with your voice?
That was Wade.
I know it was. I was there.
I mean, surprised. As the emotion of the loss and as Jerry called it, unconscionable loss and the worst loss of his tenure. As the days went by, if you're not going to make something move early on, you kind of figured that they were going to keep him, and so sort of that's what happened. My question before now is like, how do you sell it to the fan base? How do you get people? This fan base, to me, just talking to people, continue to talk to people. I went to the Mavericks game last night, and people are still angry. They're disillusioned. They have no belief in this team, in this organization going forward. They're frustrated. And I just don't know how you sell that. Obviously, 8 months, when the season starts, people have hope again. I guess it's what happens every time in the offseason. I just didn't know how you could sell that to the fan base and expect something different, because they call it definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expect a different result. And that's kind of what the fan base is feeling right now. You're doing the same thing, you're expecting a different result, but they're going to go into next year with Mike McCarthy in his lame duck year or a proven year, or however you want to call it, last year of his contract. And Mike McCarthy said, I'm a winner. I came here to win Super Bowls. I know how to win Super Bowls. My daughter sends me this text. My daughter from Houston, she got a mouth and opinions on her, and she just discovered football. She's a cheerleader. She's a big football fan. She sends me this text message. Can Mike McCarthy not read the room?
They don't. So Jerry
it sounds good that I'm a champion, but the results don't match these words, and that's the problem.
Okay, let me ask you this: you put Sean Payton's career resume up there, you put Mike McCarthy's resume and record up there, and you put Mike Tomlin's record and resume up there. They're all virtually identical. The exception being Sean has coached in two places now. Mike has coached in two places. McCarthy. Tomlin has spent his entire career in one spot. Other than that, all of the records are virtually identical.
No, and different opinion of each guy for various reasons. But, the difference and Pittsburgh is a different situation. Their ownership is very stable. They don't like making changes. They don't do that. I think that's an outlier to most situations. But the perception in Green Bay, which is the problem with Mike, is that he won because of Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers was changing plays and doing things, and that was the reason why they won. And that's not the case with Sean in New Orleans. They think Sean created, the quarterback there. The quarterback was not created, but Drew Brees' success was due to Sean. Drew Brees did not have that wild success before, but there's a perception that Drew
Brees' shoulder was ripped out of its socket.
I said the perception is that Drew Brees.
Okay, then time out. Hang on.
But that's part of it. It's perception.
I know it's part of it. But given their records and who those guys are as coaches, the perception of them, Clarence, was there anybody realistically that Jerry could have brought in that was going to be much better than this guy?
Well, that's the problem, and it's like
because Belichick wasn't coming here.
Because I got a feeling like this. You just fired the coach. I said, who you gonna get?
Thank you.
People just want their pound of flesh, and they want change for change's sake. They just want to do something different, but they don't have an action plan of who to go get. And you weren't going to get Belichick or Harbaugh. And the other contributing factor or extenuating factor is that if you change the coach, you change the offensive scheme.
Oh,
Most likely, you change the defense scheme. You're
that's
not
a
going to
big
have immediate
change.
success making those type of changes with the roster you built, and so you have to take an initial step back before you step forward. No matter who the coach is you bring in, and they weren't ready to do that. Say, well, we have a team that's been to the playoffs. They still think they can get back to the playoffs. Let's give it one last shot with Mike going forward.
They did this twice before with Jason Garrett. They did this twice before to Jason Garrett, where they let him go into the final season on a 1 year with 1 year left on his deal. Worked out really well the first time. They had a really, really good season. And the last time didn't work out at all. They finished 9-7. They missed the playoffs, which led to the hiring of Mike McCarthy. I'm of the mind, I might be in the minority here, that I think this was the right idea. Because for all the reasons that you just said, well, okay, who do you hire? And I think the other thing, too, is they are pretty good. And as I watched the conference, the divisional playoff games over the weekend, it illustrates to me that the Cowboys, they're really not that far away, and yet they're miles away. Clarence, can the Cowboys really fix all of what ails them in one off season? I think they can, but I don't know if they will. And I'm not talking about winning. I'm not talking about winning a Super Bowl. I'm talking about let's win a couple playoff games. Let's just win 2 playoff games. No, I mean I really am. It's like just win a divisional round game and phenomenal. We can finally celebrate something. But when I look at them, I'm talking the running game you can fix. I think
no doubt. Go get Derrick Henry.
I'm not crazy about that. Okay, but fine. The running game I think you can fix. The issue to me remains the interior, the middle of that defense. And that's a big fix because you got to find guys who are good. And you got to find a couple of them. So you got to find a linebacker who can stay healthy. Leighton Vander Esch is done. So now you have to find a linebacker or two and a competent defensive tackle because it looks to me like I'm not sure you can't write Mozzie Smith off yet. The first rounder from Michigan did not have a great rookie year, but you can't write him off. But you got to find somebody in the middle, some pros, and a guy who can stop the run. Because if you let other good teams do what Green Bay did in here in the wild card game, forget it. It's already over now. But I do think you can make some improvements there to potentially help you win in January, which is something this team has not done since 1996.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I think part of the issue is the scheme issue. I mean, fix the scheme.
On which side of the ball?
Defense. We're talking about the run stopping. I mean, you cannot stop the run, the 12 personnel heavy run package with a nickel defense.
No, you're right.
You can't do that. I mean, that's why they, so number one, fix the scheme. Don't run a nickel defense. Don't run a bunch of safeties out there think you're gonna stop the run. That's part of it. Go get you some real linebackers and do that. Certainly, Jonathan Hankins and Mozzie Smith, and go get you some more help up in the middle of that defense. So and so that's part of it. But
wait a minute. Hang on. I want to ask a question before about you mentioned scheme. Do you think they ran that because they kept running all those those safeties out there and moving them up close to the line because they thought that was their best play, or because they didn't like what they had at linebackers and they're like, okay, we're going to have to eat something here that's not going to be very good, so we're going to roll the dice.
I think it's a
linebackers who can't play.
I think it's a convenient excuse after the fact, but I know that they moved Marquise Bell to linebacker in training camp. That was intentional. That was purposeful. They like their 3 safety lineup. They like starting 3 safeties. That base defense they call it a big nickel with 3 safeties. And they go with 2 linebackers. They moved Marquise Bell from safety to linebacker in training camp, and they cut linebackers, and they had linebackers on the practice squad, but they preferred to go with this lineup. You can say they weren't good, but what's the alternative? I mean, you went out there with safeties who couldn't stop anybody. So you chose to this path to me. And I know that players are frustrated with the scheme, especially not being able to stop the run.
There's a part of me that wants to say, Dan Quinn is not an idiot. And I know killing him because of how he changed things so dramatically at the 11th hour against Green Bay for that wild card game is chic and in vogue, and he deserves it. But I'm sorry, if they had some better players at linebacker, some guys who'd stop the run, I don't see them running nickel out there on 3rd and 1 or 1st and 10 as often as they did. Do you?
Common sense says no. But again, You get to choose your lineup. You get to choose if you know. My thing is this: is that everybody says Jerry Jones is running thing. Jerry Jones is most coaches who work for the Cowboys get the players they want.
Yeah, they do.
Okay,
Yep.
you know, Jerry
Especially
Jones
this guy.
did not say don't go get linebackers. Don't you from cut down day to trade. He didn't say don't try to go after linebackers. That was a choice to play that nickel because there's the perception is in Dallas is we're going to get a big lead and we're going to rush the passer and I'd rather have these nickel guys. I mean that's their defense that was built to play with the lead. And
Colts used to do that because they had Peyton Manning.
They were built to play with the lead. This was a choice. Was a choice.
I hate to do this, but let's just play pretend. If Leighton Vander Esch had stayed healthy, and let
me stop you right there. The run defense wasn't great with Leighton Vander Esch.
Well, no, hang on. I was going to throw in one. No, it wasn't. It was just adequate. It was better, but it was. I mean, go back to the game he got hurt. They were running all over him.
Yes. The 49ers game. In the game before, he didn't do it. He was out there against the Cardinals when they ran all over.
God. Yeah, that's right. When James Conner ran for 180,000 yards. But if Vander Esch had stayed healthy and Demarion Overshawn had not torn up his knee in training camp. Now, that's a lot to put on a rookie fourth-round pick, especially a linebacker. But are we watching what teams
and the Trayvon Diggs don't get hurt and all of that. The defense is better. This was not the defense they hope to have.
Well, the question, let me go back to the question. With all these places that I've said they've got to get better, you've got to find a number 2 wide receiver who's competent. It's hard to hate Brandon Cooks. This is more of a shot at Michael Gallup and Jalen Tolbert. You got to find some tackles who can play, some linebackers who can play. I mean, you're gonna have to find a running back again. Can you really fix what ails this team in one off season so they can win the playoff games that they have not been winning for 27 years?
Well, yes, because what ails this team is up here.
Do you really think so?
Yes. When
you think this is more of a mind thing than it is a talent?
There's no question it was a mind thing. There's no question it was a mind. I mean, you can say what you want that Green Bay played. Well, Green Bay is not 48-32 better than the Cowboys. What is it mentally about this team that plays its worst football when the playoffs show up at home and it's not ready to play? That's a mental thing. That wasn't when you kicked off that game, the Cowboys was a 7-point favorite, okay?
No, they were never there.
That was a 7-point favorite, okay? They were 12-5 as a 9-8 Packers team. That struggled to get in the playoffs. Certainly they were 7-3 in the last 2 games. They had lost by double digits to Tampa Bay. I mean, they weren't like they were, this world beaters. And for the Cowboys to just get destroyed, not show up, not get out coached, out schemed, out efforted, everything, that's up here.
Totally agree. Well, I mean, the player that looked to me who was a mile into his own head was Dak Prescott. Like that looked like a guy who was well aware, oh crap, it's the playoffs and I'm not playing very well. I need to really, try harder. And he didn't. I mean, we might have tried harder, but he didn't play better. Okay, we've got a lot more to talk about here about the Dallas Cowboys here on Cowboys Overtime. But first, let's hear from our good friends at Window Nation.
Window Nation, the star of window replacement and proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys, can help you fill the house this season with savings. Buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and make no interest payments for 60 months, 5 full years. Fill your house for a customized authentic Dallas Cowboys jersey while supplies last. You could even help fill the Cowboys house and win tickets to a game. Visit windownation.com/Cowboys now for details. Call 866-95-NATION. Window Nation, proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
That's right, Cowboys fans. If you log on to Window Nation right now, you can sign up to win tickets to a Cowboys game 48 months from now. Clarence, look up at your screen.
I'm listening to you. Come back. I was, reading my text messages, trying to make sure we're breaking news.
Ready?
Sure.
Stop the drama. Stop the drama.
Stop the drama.
Stop the drama. Okay, over the weekend, this is why I love this team. Some family members of prominent members of the Dallas Cowboys took to social media accounts to verbally blast Dak Prescott and the team. I saw one of them on Sunday morning, and I thought, there's no way CeeDee Lamb's mom called out Dak Prescott. There's no way. I'm like, that's not real. So I didn't do anything with it. I really thought, Clarence, there's no way that's true. I was like, that's a fake. It's not. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Nobody's denying this. And then I see a little bit later, Micah Parsons has to come out and say that his brother doesn't speak for him because Micah's brother decided to express some views as well. Clarence, one of the more underreported and appreciated elements to a locker room sometimes in any sport, not just NFL, are family members and friends of the players. And sometimes it can cause a real problem in locker rooms. I remember one team that I covered where there was so much infighting amongst the wives. This was the Dallas Stars about 20 years ago. There was so much fighting and competition going on between the wives of the Dallas Stars players. It led to a big issue in that locker room, huge issue. And it was a problem. And that happens from time to time because family members are family members. When these guys go home and they hang out with their buddies or girlfriends or wives or whatever, moms, dads, they've got their opinions. Well, now they've got a platform and now they have to deal with it. And that's the problem.
Yeah,
this is something that people are going to have to deal with. But Clarence, if you're CeeDee Lamb, who's coming up on a contract, Micah Parsons, who's going to get paid, what are they? I mean, how are you supposed to address this? Because now they got to deal with it with their teammates, and it is a little awkward and embarrassing.
Yeah, the new word on the street was CeeDee Lamb's mom's Facebook was hacked.
Oh, it's great. Straight out of
advice
from Jerry Jones.
It's been shut down, and he's admonished mom and everything else. And it's like mom. CeeDee Lamb had the best season ever by Cowboys receiver, first team All Pro because of passes thrown by Dak Prescott. To go after Dak after the game was just wrong. If that's what happened, and it wasn't just that. It was certainly Michael went after Dan Quinn. Not Michael's brother went after Dan Quinn. Michael's brother has his own YouTube podcast show, and he expresses opinions. And he went after Dan Quinn, and he went after the scheme. He said Dak needs to take less money and everything else. And Michael had to come out and say, and Michael's brother loved the attention because the media were writing stories about him, and he went and Shannon Sharp talked about him on his thing, and he tweeted it, Unc had me on your show. I mean, it's like why do family members need to be celebrities? They want to.
Oh, this is like Brett Favre. Remember when Brett Favre's family used to do that? Yeah,
I mean, it's like what do you need to be celebrities for? Michael had to come out and shut down his brother, at least distance himself from his brother's comments. And of course, Dak Prescott got in on the action as well. It wasn't just,
about that.
He basically said, "I want Dak out of here. Dak wants to be here, but this family, this fan base, I would rather him be out of town or leave the Cowboys." So it's always drama. It's like the drama that is associated with the Cowboys since the loss has just increased. It's craziness. And again, Michael certainly came out and denounced his brother's comments. CeeDee has not said anything. Of course, Dak is never going to say nothing. But Dak, let's be honest, Dak is the only person that fell on the sword after the game. He's the only person that stood up.
No one.
Mike has not talked at all.
Micah didn't talk. CeeDee came out and talked.
Yeah.
I'll give CeeDee Lamb that.
Yeah.
And he was a pro about it. That's a really hard thing to do. I mean, I've tried to explain that to people that they do have some responsibility. They do.
They do. I mean, you look across the league. The Texans had a exit press conference. There are teams across the league who've lost who were talking to the media the next day, and the Cowboys did not even talk to the media the day after.
I know. We're not going to hear from them. So OTAs maybe, unless you run into them at a Mavericks game or some charity event that they're running.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different world, and the reality of it is, they don't have to.
No, and the thing about Micah is Micah usually has the podcast, and he doesn't. He's not even been on his own podcast since the game.
No, and that surprised me because what I thought he was going to do was kind of like reserve the content of saying, "Hey, I sucked, and we got to get better, and we're going to win Super Bowls." I thought what he was doing was kind of like what Aaron Rodgers has done a little bit, which is wait to have his own.
Yeah.
To reserve that for his own platform, basically, but he didn't even do that. And I think when I look at this, and my concern is like you got all these family members talking, and it's tough It is you can't shut everybody up. But Clarence, is that a problem for that locker room? Because these guys are human. I mean, you could see it on Dak Prescott's face after that game. He knew what was coming.
Right.
He lived it last offseason where it was 5 months of talk shows talking about why he sucks. And
then he has his best season of his career.
He does.
It matters now because of how he played in the playoffs.
Absolutely. And you know who went through the same thing was Dirk in 05, 06, 07. Dirk soft. Then he goes out and he wins the NBA's regular season award.
And then
MVP.
They get swept out of the playoffs by Golden State.
First time to ever lose to an 8 seed in the first round ever.
Right.
And then a few days later, he's accepting the MVP trophy, even though the season's over. First time it's ever happened, ever. It's humiliating. So it does happen. We have precedents for it here. But my question is, like, how are they going to deal with this? Because family members are talking, and you can't. What do you do about that? These are all grown men. These are grown people.
Listen. I'm to steal a line from Tony Romo. If this is the worst that's about to happen, I've lived a pretty good life.
Really? Okay, we mentioned.
Listen, Dak has had to go through a lot, but Dak's lived a pretty good life. He's come from hard and lived.
If anybody's got perspective in that locker room of life, it would be number 4.
Yeah, he's overcome a lot, and there's still a lot to overcome, but he's lived a pretty. I think that Dak has shown the shoulders. What he's had to deal with, he's had to endure, overcome his mom's death, overcome his brother's death, overcome his own depression. He's strong enough to go forward.
Clarence, Dan Quinn, the Cowboys defensive coordinator, has interviewed for every job on the planet. From what I understand, he's also lined up job interviews to be a barista at Starbucks, as well as to be a sales representative at Barnes & Noble's books. The guy's has every job lined up for an interview, everyone. Is he going to be back here?
Yeah, that's the question. Is he going to change the scheme if he does show back up? But
let's go. First ones first.
Is he going to be back?
Do you think he's going to be hired to be an NFL head coach?
I don't know. I think that he was certainly a hot name. It's been a hot name. That was certainly a horrible resume tape against Green Bay. And there are a lot of coaches being hired. I know he's had a second interview with Washington. I know he's going back to Seattle and at least the Panthers are right there, and we'll see, because they're also looking at these young hot offensive coordinators, Bob Slowick, the guy out of Houston, the kid out of Detroit, offensive coordinator, defense coordinator of Detroit, Aaron Glenn. They all are hot names and hot for those jobs. Seattle will be the perfect fit for him just because he was there and he was there when they won a Super Bowl. It's just a question of, do they want to go in a new direction, or they want to, bring a guy, a Pete Carroll protege, so to speak, in there to continue what they've been doing. And that's what Dan Quinn will be. He was the defense coordinator of the Super Bowl team under Pete Carroll. So to me, his best option will be Seattle. Again, we'll see how that goes.
If he does come back, I think he'd be, he reminds me, remember a couple of years ago when Jacksonville experimented with Urban Meyer and it was a disaster. And then they went to Doug Peterson, the old Eagles coach who won a Super Bowl. And I don't know if you remember this, but you would put it on Twitter. Maybe you might have been here. You made a really good point, which is you hired a professional head coach. And that's what I think Dan Quinn is. He damn near won a Super Bowl in Atlanta, which had never happened before. It was a historic gag, but they got there, and he did a good job in Atlanta. He's done a good job here. The last game was a fiasco. It was awful. I think NFL teams could do a lot worse than hiring Dan Quinn. Doesn't mean he gets a job, but I think any team that hired him to be a head coach.
You talk to Dan Quinn, you look at he's a leader of men, and their players respect him, and certainly he knows what it takes. He's been a head coach before. I think he's ready to learn from his mistakes, and hopefully, again, I think that sometimes we all get it wrong, because you look at what our great friend in Detroit is doing, and certainly what Harbaugh is doing. You don't have to be a hot coordinator.
Nope.
Just be a leader of men, and get the team.
Mike Tomlin was like
that.
Mike Tomlin
get the team ready to play, and certainly that's what Dan Campbell is doing. He's never been offensive coordinator, anyway, never been a defense coordinator, never been a coordinator anything, former tight end. But he's a leader of men. He hires the right people and gets his guys ready to play. He has Detroit in the Super Bowl for the first time in 60 years. Detroit
It's incredible.
In the NFC Championship game.
No. But
for the Cowboys.
Well, wait a minute. Before we talk about the championship game.
Before the Cowboys.
Before we talk about Clarence.
Before the Cowboys.
The NFL, I think every team in the NFL, but 4 have been to the conference title game since the Cowboys last made it. The NFC.
Every team but the Commanders.
The Texans. I'm going to the AFC.
Texans, they've never, they weren't.
The Texans. I can't. It was I think it was 3 teams. That have not been to the conference title game, a conference title game since the Cowboys last made it, and Washington's one of them. Before we get into the conference championship games that are going to be played on Sunday, do you think Dan Quinn will change his scheme if he stays as defensive coordinator here?
Yeah, I think he'll be more flexible with his scheme. He has to. I mean, when you
and we're talking about this whole idea.
I mean, if you look at the common thread outside the Kansas City Chiefs, these teams they run the ball, they stop the run. It's still old school football. You run the ball, you stop the run. That's the difference. You have to be able to run the ball and stop the run. It's one thing that Mike McCarthy came and wanted to do. They couldn't run the ball. You got to run the ball and stop the run.
All right, let's go to the conference championship games, and who will go to the Super Bowl and Vegas, baby? Detroit at San Francisco. I could not believe this. The Lions are 7-point underdogs. I was like, wow, that's a fat line for a conference championship game. The Chiefs at Baltimore. That's a 3-point line. Baltimore's at home, favored by 3. Other places I've seen 3.5, so 3 or 3.5. Clarence, I'm kind of with you now. I'm all on board with Detroit, the Fighting Dan Campbells, Eminem, Motown, Bob Seger, all the great artists and people have come out of Detroit and Michigan over the years who have suffered watching what was maybe the worst football team the last 30 years. They haven't been to a conference championship game since they lost at Washington, coincidentally, when Barry Sanders was the running back, Eric Kramer was the quarterback, and they got blown out. Who do you like in that game? San Francisco showed a lot to be desired in the win against Green Bay. It was pouring down rain. Brock Purdy was, but they won. They're home. They're the 1 seed, 7-point favorite. They've been here a lot. Who do you like?
I'm going with the Detroit Mojo Magic, Motor City. I'm going with Detroit. The Fighting Dan Campbell there. I want to see Detroit in the Super Bowl.
I think you're right. My heart wants this really badly for Detroit and all those fans.
Motown.
Yeah, our friend John Machota, who's from Michigan, from Detroit. He covers the Cowboys for The Athletic. He's a terrific guy. He's a big Lions guy. All of my friends, I get tons of friends from Michigan. Be a great year for the Michigan Wolverines. Cheat their way to a national championship, and now the Lions are 1 win away from the Super Bowl. All right, let's go to the AFC. Patrick Mahomes, Taylor Swift, and Travis Kelce, Jason's brother. They're now another win away from reaching another Super Bowl, but they got to go through Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson in Baltimore woke up in the second half to blow out the Texans in a pretty good game. Baltimore.
Did you just call Lamar woke?
No, I said woke. Oh, you're right. That's a good one. I missed that. Yes, Lamar woke up. Good one. I missed that. I love that term. I use that as much as I can.
It is funny as I delve, in a little politics. Only Lamar can save us from a woke Super Bowl with Taylor Swift. We don't want Taylor Swift. She's too woke.
Hey, I don't know. From a pop culture standpoint, I want Kansas City against Detroit because we'd have like Eminem, Taylor Swift. Although Taylor Swift has a show in Asia that she would have to yo-yo back and forth.
She's there's no way she got a private plane. They got money, time difference. I don't know how she would get to the Super Bowl, but yes, Lamar. I'm rooting for Baltimore, Detroit. I just don't want to see Taylor Swift in the Kansas City try to swag surf against Detroit because that swag surf they did was awful.
What's bad about it?
It was offbeat.
Why? Yeah, it was not.
It was awful. It's like Edward. Did you see Edward's dab? Remember when everybody was doing the dab?
I don't want to see that. I don't want to see middle-aged. I don't want to see anybody older than me trying to do young, hip things.
No, it's Lamar Jackson's time, and really, I think it's that Baltimore. That Baltimore defense is something else, and I tell you this. You better get Patrick Mahomes this year because they will not have a bad receiving core next year.
Well,
They will improve
that.
They will get him some real receivers next year.
Oh my God, their receivers are garbage. But I mean, we thought like New England won some Super Bowls and had a great run, even though they didn't have a bunch of celebrity wide receivers, with the exception of Randy Moss and a great tight end, Rob Gronkowski. Well, obviously Patrick's got a great tight end right now, Travis Kelce. But I mean, his receivers are garbage. The one thing about Kansas City, this is the best defense they've had. Chris Jones is not going to be Chris Jones forever. And you know that's the one thing about this team. I never thought watching that Buffalo Kansas City game at any point was Buffalo the better team. Josh Allen did everything he could, but they weren't the better team. They just weren't. Kansas City was better. And I think when you mentioned it, Baltimore's defense, Kansas City's going to put up some points, but I'm going to put my money on Baltimore and covering 3. All right. So Clarence and I were betting with our heart. We've got the Lions against the Ravens in the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Clarence will be at the Senior Bowl next week in Alabama to watch how the Cowboys are going to blow this latest draft. For all of your other Cowboys coverage needs, be sure to check us out on StarTelegram.com. Conference championship games are Sunday, and we will see you next week.